and welcome to a special edition of Packaging Europe's podcast in collaboration with ProCarton, Group and RDM Group. So for the sixth year in a row, ProCarton has commissioned a survey that gauges how consumers perceive packaging with feedback from 5,000 adults from Italy, Spain, Germany, France and the UK. And today, using the consumer data from the latest survey, we will examine how recyclability, material choice, and transparent communication influence purchasing decisions, brand loyalty, and perception of fairness around issues such as shrinkflation. And in our conversation today, our speakers will aim to deliver advice for practical actions that producers, converters, and brands can take to align with consumer expectations. And they will explore the potential of fiber-based recyclable solutions. So with that, I'd like to welcome our speakers today. We have Winfried Mülling, who is Director of Marketing and Communications at ProCarton. We've also got Birgit Hösch, who is Head of Group Marketing and Communications at Group. And last but not least, we have Christoph Krajewski, who is Chief Sustainability and Innovation Officer at RDM Group. So yeah, welcome. Looking forward to an interesting discussion today. To get us started, I wanted to talk a bit more broadly about the survey. And Vinny, I wanted to ask you, could you talk a bit more about how broader trends and developments within the world today have been reflected in the answers to the survey?
I think the answer of the surveys this year reflected very well the increasing complexity that consumers have to deal with. And so we saw in answers that there are so many information coming on consumers that it gets more and more complicated to create a clear guideline for consumers on how to deal with the complexity of the world. That is, I think, what we could clearly see. We could also clearly see that despite things like cost of living, despite things like warfare really keeping us all busy in all news shows that you hear, but the climate issue, it still remains very, very high on consumers' mind. So the awareness of the climate, the support for the environment, that is still something each and every consumer wants to do. And it's really also asking for some guidelines and for some support coming from brand owners and coming from the packaging industry.
Thank you, Winnie. And I also wanted to ask, obviously, ProCarton very much famous fiber-based packaging. Obviously, how did you avoid the pitfalls of material buyers and make sure to be objective and impartial so that the survey is objective and impartial in its methodologies and findings?
Good. So the intent of the survey is not to favor or discriminate one or the other packaging substrate. The intention of the survey is clearly to understand consumers better, to understand what is moving consumers, what is keeping consumers busy. And that is the purpose. So we are working together for the past 2 years with Perspectives Global. They have always been our partner in these studies. They do the data check. They do the data check together also with our communications partner Storm Communications in UK. And so we have different filters built in order to secure that we stay objective.
That makes sense. Thank you. Let's dive a bit deeper into the survey now. And it appears to underpin that consumers can feel financial pressure, but sustainability still matters to them, with 66% cite that cost of living is a primary challenge, but 78% say that it has become more worrying over the past 12 months. 73% want to buy sustainable products, but only if the price matches the standard products. And just 27% will pay more regardless of cost. And even among 18 to 29-year-olds, 67% say they cannot afford to pay extra for sustainability. But again, 56% say living sustainably has become more important in the last year. Leading on from all that information, I was wondering, how can the industry design circular packaging that meets performance and cost expectations? And also, where are you seeing the biggest cost efficiencies in circular packaging? Is it in material innovation, design optimization, or end-of-life systems? Birgit, maybe would you like to go first on this?
Sure, thank you. So consumers are clearly telling us that sustainability is not optional, but it must be affordable. So the key is to move away from seeing sustainability as a premium feature and instead design it as a default, more or less. And I think there is not one right solution. So this is a journey from short-term optimization, to mid-term to long-term, where the biggest impact currently comes from the design and the material efficiency. But there's also material innovation with lightweighting, monomaterial structures, and reducing complexity. That would immediately generate savings. But I think the long-term part, the real opportunity lies in the scaling of the circular system. Because once we have adjusted the recycling infrastructure and implemented fiber loop, then you really have the full optimization. And then costs will decrease significantly.
So would you like to add anything to that, Christoph?
Yeah, well, I think the cost challenge on sustainability has been on the radar for some time now. So it's not surprising to see that the sustainability is now being more embedded into consumers' habits. They want and appreciate. However, the spending is important. I think that, of course, when we think about sophisticated solutions that are delivering sustainable credentials like barrier packaging or new modern technologies or bio-based solutions that are emerging and they are in the pilot scale or small scale, they're typically very expensive at the beginning. But you can find out smart innovation solutions and also very easy, quick wins that are making the packaging more sustainable without adding cost. Actually, it may go hand in hand in cost reduction. So if you think about the size reduction, if you think about the optimization of the empty space in the box or the empty space in a container, you reduce the weight and you reduce the cost and you make packaging more sustainable. So using innovation in a smart way, I think can not necessarily bring cost upcharge. So it's up to the designers and working closely with all value streams, of course, to be synchronized. But you can always look for some solutions which are not necessarily adding a lot of cost. And also scale up solutions. So standardizations, the big production runs, the mass of the production is bringing the cost down as well. So utilization rates, the capacity utilization, and so on. So there are multiple factors that can drive the cost down.
Thank you. And I wanted to get your take of where you see the benefits of fiber-based packaging materials, maybe versus other packaging materials like fossil-based ones. Winnie, would you like to get started on that one?
I think we are moving, if you look at the current trends in macroeconomics, we are moving more and more away from this globalization. We're becoming more and more a regional world economy. And I think this is, of course, where the strengths that I see in the fiber-based materials, that we are more or less a European-based industry. If you look at where we source the materials from, it's mainly coming from EU forests. If you look at where we produce the material, it's produced in European mills and then in European converting sites. And then the consumers are mainly based in Europe. And then also the recycling, the collection, the recycling end of use, end of life, we also do in Europe. So I think we are very much a European-centered industry. And that's, of course, a benefit in a world that is increasingly dealing with supply chain disruptions. It's increasingly dealing with problems of bridging long distances, especially what the situation that we are facing right now with having a bottleneck in one little area in the world. And this bottleneck basically threatens to interrupt the whole supply chains. This one we can really go against with the fiber-based materials where we are really European-centered and European-based.
I'd like to move on to topics of the climate and also recycling and recyclability. And the survey, they found that 85% of consumers consider the climate impact of packaging at least sometimes before purchase. And also 64% around ease of recycling as their top packaging requirement. Furthermore, 62% see recycling as one of the most effective ways to combat climate change. And 40% have increased purchases of sustainable products, and 59% are recycling more household waste, and 38% are cutting plastic package purchases. In the context of this, how can fiber-based packaging better signal its circular credential on pack, for example, with design, messaging, and cues? Maybe one for you, Christoph.
I think the fiber-based packaging is already communicating well with consumers in comparison to some other materials. So being close to the nature, the look and feel, the perception of the packaging becoming more, from the nature, the renewable side of the materials, and it all speaks by itself. The look and feel, as I said, touch, and the well-embedded consumer understanding and preference. But I think, especially speaking from the recycler standpoint, so I'm representing also recycling industry, since we are recycling papers, I believe we could improve the communication by showing the nature of recycled materials, by showing and displaying the true color of recycled fibers, for example. So not being brown, but being gray, for example. So conveying the message that the gray is the new green, and the gray means recycled, coming from recycling. So these kind of messages would be very appealing, in my opinion, to consumers. For example, we launched some products which are uncoated boards. So instead of clay coating, you visibly show the rough fibers on the outside, but still being prepared for the modern printing technologies, but conveying opening pores, opening the fibers to consumers. It gives you the more credibility that this is not fossil-based plastic or material or something else. Also, the on-pack labeling, I think that was PPWR and the regulation around icons on the packaging and on-pack labeling standards. This is another way of communicating how you should recycle and how to dispose the packaging properly. And also possibly communicating recycled content as well, again, signaling that the packaging is coming from the recycling streams.
No, I think it is a lot from this simplicity. I think we should look away that the consumer is looking for the colorful and always overly information load on a package. I think it's the simplicity that is also appealing to consumers. Yeah, the simplicity, and also mentioned by Birgit before, looking for monomaterials increasingly. Yeah, so that makes the decision for recycling a lot easier for consumers. Yeah, so simplicity, I think that might be one of the things that we need to look more into. Yeah.
But I think that's also an industry task itself. Yeah. So that we are really communicating customer centric. Yeah. That means clear on-pack recycling instructions. Yeah. That the consumer does not have to search for. Yeah. That is obvious, intuitive, and visible at the point of purchase.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. And really, as you say, simplicity. If you see a shiny packaging, which looks like, it doesn't even look like a paper. It can be coated. It can be coated with some polymers, with metallization, a lot of decoration. You don't really see what is this inside. What is underneath? What is the backbone? Is it recycled? Is it paper at all? So stripping it down from all this flashy communication, I think that will definitely help.
And you see also on the shelves, you see some brands intentionally using the natural brown or the natural grayness of a carton board and putting this on the shelf, because this is what makes the product stand out next to all the colorful packages. Yeah, so I think there is a new trend that you can see, whether it is now in our folding carton world or whether it is also in the beverage carton world. You see a lot of these things happening, that really simplicity, simple designs, and showing off the natural origin of the material. I think that is also taking place increasingly.
I think that also depends on the industry, to be honest. When you deep dive into the beauty or luxury sector, there you have to shine. Yeah, more or less. They want to buy the luxury. And therefore, for example, is working with reflect finishing effects, that are sustainable finishing effects. And also gives you the shine and the powerful, colorful packages on the shelves then at the end.
So that would then go to the level of innovation, that you're really innovating with environmentally friendly materials to make the impact, but do it less harmful for the environment. Yeah, that's what I understand.
Exactly.
Yes. As a consumer myself, I'd agree with all these points. I think simplicity is definitely very important and maybe could be boosted a bit more. I also wanted to know, is the industry doing enough to show consumers that recycling systems actually work for fiber-based packaging and how they work in practice, how well they work in practice? Maybe one for you, Willy.
Of course, that's part of our work as the association for the carton board and folding carton board users. So we are doing a lot to communicate. We are also working directly, for example, with schools, with universities. We have projects in place where we bring the concept of recycling close to as early as kindergarten age. Yeah, so we have different projects in place. Do we reach now everybody we want to reach? For sure, we have to further find new channels, new ways of communication, but we do our very best as an association to really communicate the benefits of a recyclable material coming from renewable resources. That is, I think, the strength of carton board. That is what is our passion, working in the industry. That is our passion. That is what we are all standing for.
Thank you. And yes, my last question of this section. Birgit, I wanted to ask you, how can packaging convert consumer intent into consistent repeat purchases?
I think packaging plays a bigger role than many brands realize. It's often the first physical touch point. So if a bag is easy to recycle, feels responsible, and aligns with consumers' values, it reinforces trust. And trust delivers loyalty at the end. And packaging that can drive repeat purchases when it becomes part of the positive circularity experience for the consumer, then it's not just a product, and it's also something like a well-being thing here, or the consumer is doing. So the real opportunity goes beyond the bag itself. In my opinion, it's about how well the entire circular system works. From design to collection to the whole recycling process. And there it's from the board, to technology, to the printing process, to the shelf. So it's the full supply chain at the end that has to come together.
Yeah, I just want to add on the point what Birgit said. I think that is one of the key takeouts of the study, the importance of packaging, of creating this bonding to consumers. The importance of packaging, of creating this brand loyalty. If there is one main takeout I want to stress, that is the really increased importance of packaging doing exactly this. Really being the first touch on the shelf even before the product is anywhere in reach. That is where the meaning of packaging comes from. And it was also clearly outlined that it was 2 out of 3 consumers who would tell us that the interaction with the packaging has a direct impact on the product. So the interaction with the packaging, the first touch of the packaging, the experience of the packaging, that has a very important function in order to really create a lasting brand loyalty.
It's an interesting insight. It's very encouraging for the packaging industry overall. So not necessarily only the fiber-based packaging or sustainable packaging, because it brings the attention to the principles of packaging functions. It's not only protection function, but it's a marketing function. It must be fun, must be playful, must be easy to open. It must be easy for elderly to use, not accessible for the kids. So there are many functions of packaging which have been somehow lost in last years, I would say, because we were focusing on reducing packaging, eliminating packaging, but still the packaging as a whole, with so many functions incorporated, is bringing the original packaging function back to life. That's how I see it.
Yeah, and we add new dimensions to the packaging, yeah? So meaning the added value a consumer today sees, it is already the end of life, yeah? So already at point of sales, he will have an impression, what am I going to do with the package end of life? And he doesn't want to be bothered with this decision. He wants this to be an easy decision and a clear decision what to do and how to deal with. And this already has also an impact on the purchasing decision, yeah? So packaging today, I think it plays a much wider and a much more important role than what we had before.
So I think that's definitely very important to take away from this discussion. Okay, I wanted to move on to the fact that the study also showed that many consumers perceive cardboard to be more sustainable. 84% said they would choose cardboard or plastic for the same product. And fiber-based materials now enjoy 87% consumer confidence in successful recycling. 37% of consumers switch the brand only for reason of packaging. Non-recyclable packaging is the leading reason for switching brands for consumers, according to the survey, driving 53% of product changes. And looking at people who've switched brands over packaging, this was 60% in Spain, 55% in Italy, 52% in France, 48% in Germany, and 36% in the UK. And among the 18 to 29-year-olds, 54% have switched due to packaging, and 31% say media or peer pressure influenced their switch. Delving a bit deeper into this, I wanted to ask you, for brands still reliant on non-recycled formats, what does this 37% brand switching risk really mean for the market share and loyalty? Maybe one for you, Willi.
I think one repeating scheme or one repeating topic that we saw coming from the survey, it is the importance of recycling. Yeah, so that is what we saw reflected in different answers, in different questions, that are recycling and the ease of recycling. That is a key decision maker in the meantime for consumers that support a decision pro or against the product. Yeah, so again, end of life, the consumer does not want to be bothered with what to do with the packaging material. Consumers want to do good. Consumers want to support a circularity system. That's a natural behavior. But we need to make sure that people understand, and that is where the simplicity comes in, taking out as much of the complexity as we can as a packaging or as the brand owner's industry, and securing that we support the consumer in this request for doing things right. So this can also be that maybe by adding labels if required. I think the benefit here we see, of course, from fiber-based, it's a natural thing that the consumers separate paper, cardboard packaging from other packaging. If I reflect on my own experience, when I grew up, we had a very small apartment. We were living 4 people of us in an apartment of 60 square meters, but my mother still kept this 1 square meter free for cardboard packaging, where you would separate the cardboard. So in a very limited living space, this 1 square meter was given. And that is, I think, how we grow up today. It has become a natural behavior to separate paper and cardboard. And that is, of course, what we also need. That's what we want the consumer to do, because we want to get the material back as clean as possible to our mills, for RDM Group, for Group, to really make the best recycled packaging out of it again. So I think the importance of recycling and ease of recycling, that is what we need to have in mind, that what brand owners need to have in mind when they decide for the right packaging.
But I would go a step further, to be honest, and say, okay, long-time packaging is just seen as a cost factor for brand owners. So now it's a driver of market share at the end.
I would point out a remarkable correlation between those percentages and the recycling rates in Europe for different materials. I mean, look, 87% consumer confidence in successful recycling. Speaking about carton board, this is the rate of recycling in EU for paper and
Yes.
carton board. So consumers perceive what they witness. If in their country there is collection stream for paper, they believe that this is most recyclable material as well. So collection and the whole infrastructure, the architects of this infrastructure have a very big influence on consumer perception, what is recyclable and what is not recyclable. And I think fiber-based packaging has one big advantage because it's just one fiber. It's one natural polymer with a cellulose when you can blend and mix all different type of papers. In plastics or in other materials, there are some more challenges and confusion. How should I sort it? Where should I throw it away? What does PP means? What does PET means? What is the other different abbreviation means? Paper is paper. I just throw it into one bin. And I think the simplicity, again, coming back to the point of simplicity, is a very strong point, which gives you the credit of the recycling rate, but also the consumer perception of recyclability of those different materials. And then I think the percentages for the countries are also mirroring the level of development of recycling infrastructure within the countries. So you see Italy and Spain being on top, and then France somehow behind, followed by UK. And so this is also mirroring the development of recycling, collection, and the whole, because recycling is not designed for recycling. Recycling is a couple of things. It's designed for recycling, it's collection, it's actual recycling or reprocessing. And then last but not least is the use of recycled materials. So we need to make sure that we always remember about all the elements in the definition of recyclable packaging. But I think what strikes me most is, again, the correlation between those numbers coming from consumers mirroring the country international infrastructures.
I think look at it from a consumer perspective. Elizabeth, you mentioned the trust that it comes along with. I think it's consumers trust the collection and recycling system of fiberboard. And that is simply for the reason of being used to it. Yeah. So also, of course, the intrinsic motivation of collecting and separating before you put for recycling. It also comes from a credible system. What you see back on the shelves. So if you see on the shelves that the packaging comes back as recycled packaging on the shelves, then it becomes much more credible. It becomes for the consumer a visible sign that there is a reward for his efforts to separate and recycle. We also see it, if you look at the plastic world, where it's working well, it is with rigid plastics. Take PET here in Switzerland, for example. PET in Switzerland, we have no deposit in Switzerland. We still get a 92-93% recycling rate of PET, just simply by making it credible to the consumer that what you collect, what you separate, will come back on the shelves as a recycled PET bottle. And the same, I think, it is for fiber-based material. It is that consumers understand that the effort of separating will be rewarded with recycled packaging coming back on the shelves. That's what they see when they march through the aisles of a retail store. They see all the recycled boards and virgin board sitting nicely next to each other. And this credibility, that is what nurtures the intrinsic motivation of consumers to join in. That is how we reach the 87% recycling rate that Christoph was mentioning. Only with support of the consumers, only with including consumers in the whole circularity system.
Yeah, and I think that is especially for the young consumers, and the 87% trust there, they are heavily influenced because they are influenced by peers, by media, by visible proof then. Yeah, so I think that shows the figure as well in the customer survey.
It's interesting to see how this links up. I also wanted to talk a bit about the topics of concerns about shrinkflation, transparency and fairness, which was also covered in the survey. And 73% of consumers said that they're at least somewhat aware of shrinkflation, and 39% say they're very aware, breaking this down a bit, it's 50% in France and 45% in the UK. And 89% of consumers take at least one sanctioning action, 50% look for better value, 31% switch brands, and 22% stop buying. And only 11% keep buying as normal. And delving a bit deeper into this, Vinny, what would you say? What is the recommendation to brand owners considering the 81% of consumers who will sanction the brand?
So it was the first time that we built in this question in our questionnaire this year, because we are simply interested to see, we are observing shrinkflation, which is a normal attitude all over Asia when you see things. You have your critical price point on the shelves. You do not want to change the critical price point, so you change the volume that you use in order to sell. But now look at the figures. You mentioned the 89% of consumers who will sanction, who will react somewhere. I think this is all about trust. This is all about trusting a brand. And if a consumer feels fooled, then of course he moves away. Then he moves away and looks for alternatives. This could be an alternative supplier in the same category. It could be that he stops using the product or buying the product at all. And this, of course, is something you want to avoid by all means. So my major takeout from this question, it is, we have to be very careful when we use shrinkflation. We would rather recommend to be very transparent. So if you change the size of the packaging, communicate it more than the minimum size that the law would force you to. Really be very transparent. I mean, there was one example in Germany that I reflect on. That is a supplier of cereals, So they changed the packaging size and they really made it a dominant theme of their marketing communication. We had to change for this reason. And then you will not lose consumers, or you will not lose the 90% of the consumers that you will lose otherwise if you try to make it through the back door, So be as transparent as you can be. Be as open as you can be at the front panel of your package, and don't use the back panel of your package to communicate if you change the packaging size.
I think the packaging can also help to not to deceive the size, the right size, because what has been evident in the last years is that you open the box and there is a little product just at the bottom of the box. So you have overly the size impression when you look at the packaging. It looks like a lot of product inside. But when you open the packaging, it's apparently you have a surprise that is just so little. So I think the important thing is that the packaging design will be equivalent to the size of the product, the content as well. So what you're buying, you think you're buying with your eyes. So that packaging can distort it as well by making a big shelf impression with a flat packaging, right? So we have a very, very big billboard, but apparently it's a pizza box thin on a depth, which you don't see from the front of the shelf. You know what I mean? So packaging design can really help to navigate the right size.
Yes, I think these are issues that as a consumer myself, I find very annoying, and it's very much appreciated when it's transparent. Also on the shrinkflation questions, I wanted to ask you, also maybe starting with you, Vinny, can the visible sustainability of fiber packs, like with the quoted 87% trust, counteract the 89% sanctioning response that shrinkflation typically triggers?
Of course, let's say the trust factor of fiber-based packaging can help to ease the pain a little bit, but it will not take the pain away. Yeah, I think if you really choose to go for shrinkflation as part of your product strategy, then no matter what package you choose, if you do not do it in a transparent way, consumers will show you the result of your action. The consumers will move away, no matter whether it's a fiber-based package or whether it's any other materials that is used. But I think, of course, with a fiber packaging material, whatever has the touch of the haptic of fiber or paper, that is where the consumer already gets a positive connection also to the product. Remember the 66% we discussed before, 2 out of 3 consumers have this positive connection. But again, it will not help you. You cannot use packaging material to hide shrinkflation and intransparent shrinkflation that you do. this will not work either, also with the fiber-based packaging material. Transparency, that is what it takes. If you change the size of the package, communicate that you change the size of the package and communicate the reasons why you change the size of the package. There could be a convincing reason behind it. That is, I think, if you communicate this openly to consumers, then I think everything is fine.
That makes a lot of sense, and as a consumer, I'd agree with that. Okay, I wanted to wrap up our conversation today by asking you one final question. How can producers, converters, and brands align to maintain trust in recycling and sustainable materials? Maybe you'd like to get us started, Winnie, and then Birgit and Christoph can add to it.
I think it's all the magic of collaboration, yeah? So working across the entire value chain. We have good examples here in fiber-based. We have organizations like Get Forever Green who do exactly this, yeah? Bring in different representatives of all different areas of the value chain and have them find and define solutions. I think for me, this all is covered with the magic of collaboration, co-developments, all these points I would see working in here. The recycling, finally, you can only recycle what you collect. For the collection, you will need the consumer. So the consumer at the far end of the value chain, there is also somebody we should never forget, which is forgotten very often in all different areas, from legislation to different things. Let's not forget about the consumer at the far end of the value chain.
I'm fully aligned with that. So co-development for MME with the customer is becoming a key success factor in circular packaging. Because solutions don't come from one side. Yeah, they emerge when material expertise or brand needs and consumer expectation are brought together early in the process. And that's how we ensure that packaging is not only sustainable, but also functional, and also scalable and commercial viable. So we are looking into the product requirements, like period properties or shelf life. We are also aligned on the sustainability targets and optimized design for cost and for scalability at the end.
Fully agree about the collaboration. And I believe the collaboration must be circular, meaning that the collaboration should go through all of the circular steps. So not being just between one of two players, but across all the value chain. So in the past, we've been participating in a three-party developments, two-party developments, but in circularity, sometimes you may need 4 different players in the room. If you are a brand owner, if you are designing a new packaging, you need to understand how the recycling is happening. Have you been to a recycling plant before? Have you seen how recycling works? Then you understand how to design the packaging for recycling. So it's really, the new reality is that we need to collaborate more and we need to make new partnerships. If you were a brand owner 10 years ago, probably you haven't visited MRFs, the material collection facilities or recycling facilities, the PERFs, so you don't even know those acronyms. But nowadays, you start understanding them. You go to the sorting plant, you see how the recycling actually works. So these are new partnerships that were not known before. So I believe what comes now to in front is to have a full round table of multiple collaborators, and also collaborating between the industries. So if you are in the paper, if you are in the plastic industry, there are certain elements which you can help each other. The circularity of papers can help circularity of plastics. So there are a couple of examples in launches on the market when this collaboration is really appreciated by the brand owners, because it gives a fair level vision, not just being blocked in the one silo, but having an overarching view of a bigger picture as well. So when you develop barrier materials, the new technologies, it's critical that we as a fiber-based and paper producers and carton board producers, that we understand what is behind the barrier technology, what are the how we can help each other, right? How we can make it cost going down. Coming back to the previous question, the affordability is a challenge. If we can start working together right now with the barrier solution provider, we can cut it down. Instead of having a third-party coating, we can see how to innovate and create a coating which we can coat in-house using our existing equipment to drive the cost down, to make really cost-affordable barrier solutions. Doing it alone would never work. You need to work with your partners in order to find out and invite yourself to each other's factories and open the books. Like, what are the challenges and what are the opportunities?
Which I think, well, of course, both Group and RDM Group, like the spider in the web, I could see, yeah? Because you do the recycling, you are in contact with the very end of the value chain. And of course, you also look at the front end of the value chain. You're looking at how can you include suppliers to define solutions for your customers, yeah? Cost-efficient solutions and environmentally friendly solutions.
Great. I think that's a great note to end this conversation on. We've reiterated the importance of collaboration, and that's always very important. And also the importance of looking into the real world with surveys like that and seeing what people actually think about packaging. That's always very insightful. I'll also share a link to the survey in the podcast notes. You can have a closer look at it if you'd like to. That just leaves me to thank you, Birgit, Vinny, and Christoph for sharing your insights today, and thank you for a really interesting conversation. And just a quick reminder to our listeners, make sure you subscribe to our podcast so you don't miss out on any of the latest episodes.